You all for joining us today for our pre-proposal meeting regarding the SAGE's Reconnecting Communities Project. Before we dive into who SAGE is and what the project is all about, allow me to introduce myself and the SAGE team. My name is Shalea Ezel. I am the program manager here at SAGE, and I also will be the primary point of contact for this program. So throughout the process, as you have questions, if you have some feedback or just generally want to get in touch with Sage, I will be the person that you'll most likely be speaking with. On the line with us today, I do have our CEO, James. I'm going to throw it over to him to introduce himself.
Thank you, Shalea, and good afternoon, everyone. We are overjoyed to have you all join us today. As Shalea mentioned, my name is James Norte. I have the joy and honor to serve as CEO, and I'm very excited to kick off this conversation regarding this incredible opportunity.
Thank you. Also on the line, we have our director, Lindsay. You'll notice her in the chat as well. But Lindsay, did you want to quickly unmute and say hello to the group?
Hello, everybody. My name is Lindsay Logan. I'm the Director of Programs and Partnerships here at SAGE. Glad to have you here. I'll be in the background in the chat if you need anything.
Thanks, Lindsay, and thanks, James. I want to go over some quick housekeeping items, and then we're going to dive right into it because I want to be respectful of everyone's time and get you guys the information that you asked for, and also make sure we have time for you to ask questions at the end. So if you haven't already noticed, this meeting will be recorded. So it is recording now. We will be posting not only the recording of this meeting, as well as the slides that we're going to go over and an FAQ to our website by next week. And I'll send an email notification to everyone that has been uploaded. Speaking of email notification, if you'll do me a huge favor and just type in the chat your preferred email address, that will ensure that I do get that notification sent to your preferred email. So if you'll take a moment, and I'll remind you at the end of the call, just throw your email in the chat for us, and that way we have it. Additionally, I am going to ask that everyone remain on mute just so that way we're not getting too much background noise. The exception will be, of course, when we get to Q&A. When we get there, anyone who's speaking, I'm going to ask that you just either use the raise hand icon or let us know in the chat that you'd like to ask a question. And at that point in time, we'll ask you to come off mute. Speaking of using the chat, we're going to give a lot of information before we get to Q&A. So please, please, please feel free. If during the conversation you have a question that you don't think you're going to remember, put it in the chat. You can save it there. And when Q&A comes, we'll go through the chat and make sure we've answered those questions first. And then we'll open it up to open floor for any other questions that anyone may have. Before I go forward, I am going to ask, does anyone have any immediate questions about any of the information I just provided? I see shakings of no's. All right, excellent. Well, let's go ahead and get started then. Here is our agenda for our time together. We'll have a quick welcome, and a meeting overview, which we just did. Next, I'm going to go into background on SAGE. I can tell through some of the emails I've had with several of you leading up to this meeting that some of you have some good understanding of who we are here at SAGE. But just in case you're not familiar, I want to make sure everyone understands what our organization does and who our audience is. After that, we'll go over our project overview, and then we'll dive into the RFQ. We'll kind of look at that together, including going over the timeline expectations and taking a look at the application itself. And that way, if there's any questions that you've had about either of those items, you can kind of put those in the chat as well as we're discussing. And then lastly, as promised, we'll open the floor for Q&A. We'll start with reviewing any of the questions that I see in the chat to make sure we haven't missed any of them during the conversation. And then we'll open it up for open floor. That way, if there's anything else that you haven't had a chance to answer or get answered, we can do that at that time. So let's start with, who is SAGE? Who are we? SAGE stands for San Antonio for Growth on the Eastside, and we are a 501c3 economic development nonprofit that serves the east side of San Antonio. We just had our birthday yesterday, so we hit 28 years old. We're very excited about that. And in a nutshell, we are helping local businesses thrive. We're protecting cultural heritage over here on the east side, and as well as connecting our change makers with the tools needed to help them build a more inclusive and vibrant future. So, a lot of exciting things that are happening here on the east side, and I'm very honored that Sage can have a hand in being a part of that. Our mission, as you probably have guessed, is to promote economic development as well as cultural vitality here on San Antonio's East Side. And that's because we envision the East Side not only as a place to work, but as home and destination, an economically vibrant, inclusive community where there's an opportunity for anyone to live, work, worship, and play. Now, at Sage, we celebrate a diverse and the diversity and the richness of the culture that's here on the East Side, while also wanting to acknowledge the realities of historical disinvestment that has happened in this part of town. We lead not only our projects, but conversations in every interaction and partnership with honesty, without remaining in a state of defeatism, so we can move forward collectively. So that's our story here at the organization. And as I mentioned, we're 28. So we were founded back in 1998, May 5th. And at that founding, we set to achieve 7 objectives. You have facilitating business development, generating jobs here on the East Side, assisting with planning, coordination of development, real estate, seeking financial investors. But probably most important is that 7th one. And that is to establish a strong, positive relationship not only with the business owners, but also our neighborhood organizations, our faith community, and other Eastern community groups and individuals that are here on the East Side. We tie that into everything that we do, and it's how we go into listening and learning from the community that we serve. Now, you're probably wondering, what is the East Side? I was in a meeting just yesterday with a stakeholder, and she's like, when you think of East Side, there's a lot of facets to that. And so, yes, it is. Our footprint is pretty large. So our service area here at Sage is 75 square miles. And it includes not only San Antonio, but the cities of Windcrest, Kirby, and Converse, as you can see here on the map. Now, there are many assumptions about the East Side that we try to counter with facts. So for example, you can see here that over half of the residents on the East Side own their own home. 57% of our housing here is actually owner occupied, with the other half, or the other 43%, being renter occupied. We have 19% of our residents identifying as Black or African American. So historically, and even today, the East Side is assumed that it's predominantly Black. And while the significant portion of residents identifying as Black or African American do live over here, that's not the only group that's here. We have a large Hispanic and Latino population. We have an indigenous population that's prevalent over here. So we are pretty culturally and racially diverse here on the East Side. Additionally, as reflected in our map, it's not just about the geographical location of the East Side. So some folks think like the more historic area going closer to downtown, but also where the people have spread out. There are many individuals who were raised in and still have ties to the historical East Side, but they've kind of moved farther out into almost that new East. And so our service area encompasses all of the history and the community that make up the East Side today. And that's what explains why our footprint is so large. So all of that, how can we summarize what Sage does? If we had to break it down into 3 points, this would be it. We support small businesses here on the East Side. We preserve culture and heritage. And also we focus on community development without displacement as well. And if you guys can't see him in the video, that's James as well. So now that you know a little bit about San Antonio for Growth on the East Side, let's talk more about why you're all here. The project, the Reconnecting Communities Project, which if you hear me say RCP, that's how we're referring to it internally as well. Starting with our overview, and some of you, or you likely read this in our RFQ, back in 2024, the US Department of Transportation awarded Sage with a $2 million Reconnecting Communities Project, RCP, planning grant. And that's to address the longstanding barriers created by the highways that are cutting right alongside or through San Antonio's east side. So with those funds, we are hoping to develop a comprehensive strategy to bury, cap, and ultimately transform sections of I-10, I-35, and I-37. And just so that we're all grounded in these definitions, when we say bury, we're talking about lowering the highway below ground, so it no longer sits at an elevated structure. When we're talking about capping, we're talking about putting something over a buried highway, and other transformation like stitching, so reconnecting streets, sidewalks, and public spaces across or along the highway. And we're aiming to reconnect historically divided neighborhoods, enhance mobility through and across the east side, and help spur that economic development that's going around or that's happening outside of those highways and inside the east side as well. We do have some goals. So we have about 5 goals with this project. And I'll stay here for a moment so that way you guys can read all of the words, but I'm just going to kind of highlight these bullets as you're reading over. We are reconnecting communities. We're enhancing mobility options, improving economic development, and reclaiming community spaces, as well as helping to reduce speed and improving safety around those areas. We have 3 highways, as I mentioned. So you have 37, 35, and then 10. But as you can see here on the graphic, we are actually looking at 4 areas of concern. So when you're talking about I-35, we're looking at this space here from Broadway Street to Walters, 37, Carolina to Broadway. And then at I-10, we actually have identified 2 potential areas that we want to look at. So you have Piedmont Avenue and Walters, and then also over here, you have MLK over down to Houston Street. And so the question came up, one of you may have asked this, so if this sounds like your question, it got added, is how do we determine what the 4 study areas are for this project? What made us come up with that? And in a nutshell, right, highways are designed to connect commerce and communities. It's one of the great things about highways. Unfortunately, and this isn't unique to San Antonio, a byproduct of routing our highways through a city has resulted in disconnection, as well as economically vulnerable communities have been displaced and disconnected from commerce and growth that's happening around them. And so we look to find a way to overcome that byproduct and help positively reinforce those things as well. And now the city is also a recipient of a similar grant. So in full transparency, we aren't the only ones who are looking at Reconnecting Communities Project. The city received a similar grant in March 2026. They received a $3.7 million contract to AECOM Technical Services, and that study is to bridge the barrier between downtown and the east side. So specifically, they're looking only at 37 with their particular grant. Sage is involved in this process. We are actively going to be working with the city to coordinate our project with theirs. However, again, their project's only focusing on one study, I-37, and we want to look at all 4 of those points of contention. So collaboration, but still necessary to have the second project as well. Now, our vision for this project is to, by the end of it all, have an ambitious analysis that will explore the feasibility. Is it possible, and what does that possibility look like to retrofit those 3 areas, or excuse me, those 4 areas across our 3 highways? Could it be green spaces, right? What does that look like? We want it to be places where people can gain greater access to housing, work, and play, and also allow them to move freely and safely across the east side. And on that note, that takes us to the RFQ. So let's get into the meat and the potatoes and really where a lot of the questions that we've received so far are coming from, and that's with our RFQ. So I'm going to go over an overview, and then in just a second, I'm going to actually jump over to the actual document itself. And again, just as a reminder, if you think of questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat if you would like, so we can circle back to them when we get to the Q&A. But as an overview, Our RFQ includes a scope of work that's consisting of 3 tasks: preliminary planning and partner engagement. Task 2 is community engagement and data collection. And task 3 is data analysis and reporting. And the deliverables that we're looking to have is to have a comprehensive planning study report, as well as a detailed timeline and budget for future project phases. Now, our project and timeline budget is $2.5 million. And I know some of you had some questions about how do we get from 2 million to $2.5 million. So I'll explain this a bit here. The Reconnecting Communities pilot program requires a non-federal match to ensure local investment. So for planning grants, the federal share is 80%, requiring a 20% non-federal match. So to give you the numbers, Sage was awarded $2 million, and then we will be contributing the remaining 500,000, so that other $500,000. So that's where we get the 2.5. Additionally, the contractors for professional services is not to exceed the contract value of about 2.3 million. So that 2.5, 2.3 is the cap for our professional services, as the remainder of the grant is expected to be used by Sage personnel to promote community engagement efforts. Okay. And James, I'm going to ask you, did you want to add anything else around that, or you think we're good for right now?
No, you covered that well. So I think we're all set. If there's further questions, we can tackle that in the end. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Now, in our submittal requirements, we are asking for a letter of interest, your project approach, project team and qualifications, and relevant experiences and/or references as well. And so on that note, I'm going to actually pull up the RFQ itself. Give me just a moment. Which, if you have not had an opportunity to look at the RFQ or aren't sure where to find it, it is on our website, our Reconnecting Communities Project page. I'm going to also drop that link here in the chat for anybody who needs it. If you scroll down just a bit, you'll see a link to our PDF, and that takes you right to the RFQ. Immediately next to that is the Apply Here button as well. Now, next week, not today, you'll see that the meeting information that's here will disappear. And what we'll also have added is links to this recording, the deck that we're looking at, as well as our grant information from US DOT as well. So all of that will be added by next week for you. But let's take a look at that RFQ. And thank you, Sarah, for your question. We'll be sure that we circle back to that. So here's our RFQ, and at the top, it has some background. We will not read this together since you already looked at a handful of slides, but it is there if you want to get refreshed. It gives you information not only of Sage, but of the project itself. And then here's some additional details immediately at the bottom of that first page regarding the scope of work. So specifically, you'll see that you have some additional bullet points underneath each of the tasks. For example, with task 1, we're asking that includes reviewing any previously published community plans available on Sage's website, reviewing the City of San Antonio's efforts to connect the east side of downtown, and also identifying any community stakeholders and assisting us with community engagement efforts. Now, community engagement is expected to be a collaborative process as well. And so further down as we go into task 2, you'll see that it talks about that, conducting focus groups and other engagement activities with the public so we can gather input from them, presenting preliminary concepts of the project at town hall meetings for community review. So we definitely want not only input, but transparency and awareness and getting that feedback from our community members and our stakeholders as well. And then lastly, for the data analysis, having the feasibility of reconnecting those neighborhoods, preparing economic and environmental impact of the project, preparing those architectural designs, renderings, concepts, etc., and then having a final concept that we can present at community meetings and also to our board of directors with viable alternative options. So what's the best one, but then also what are some options we can look at if the best is not something that's going to be the most ideal for us to go with. Again, you have mention of those deliverables that we talked about. And then further details or breakdown of those submittal requirements. So taking a look at the letter of interest, indicating your interest and availability to address the project, and as well as including that contact information. The project approach. So what would your firm's philosophy be at approaching this? What's your understanding of the history of the Eastside? And what do you want to do, or how would you like to go about approaching this project? And then including some key scope considerations, project management methodology, and a proposed timeline as well. We'd like to know who's on your team. Who would you like to have working on this project? So who is the project manager that you would be utilizing? And any key team members, including any sub-consultants that you would be willing to pull in. Providing any resumes or summaries of qualification, certification, or relevant experience as appropriate for those individuals as well. And then lastly, the relevant experience and references. We asked for 2 examples at least of projects that demonstrate relevant experience. Some of you may have experience doing a project almost identical to this. That's great. Some of you, this may be something that is new, and that's also okay. We still want some examples with something similar that can show us examples of what you've done in the past. Here's our evaluation criteria for the submissions. You'll see that it's most heavily weighed by the qualifications of your project team. But also we're looking at your project strategy, what's your creativity, what's your vision, and also very important, how does it align with the Eastside's goals and our missions here at Sage? Project execution, so what's the feasibility of your methodology and timeline, as well as looking at those references and past performance. You can see that has the lowest weight of 10%. So again, just because you haven't done a project like this does not mean you're not a great candidate. We still would love to get your application and see what your firm thinks would be a great project for us. We've talked a bit about the budget and timeline already, but that information is down here as well, explaining the total project budget. And again, the 2.3 million for the project completion and exceeded contract value as well. You also have a quick little bit of information regarding our community engagement. So we want to make sure, as I mentioned, that our community members are engaged. I think that goes for most projects. The communities that are going to be most impacted want to feel like something is done with them, not to them. And that is especially important here on the Eastside as well. So we want to make sure that we are reaching out to organizations like our neighborhood associations. Who are businesses on the Eastside? Who are key stakeholders that we should rope into? What are some strategies that you would recommend or that we want to utilize to make sure that we're getting input? A plan for publicizing engagement events and ensuring broad participation as well is also something that we are looking for and interested in receiving. Now, a question did come up in the last week or so regarding community engagement. This will be on our FAQs as well, but I thought it was, in case anybody's thinking about it, I wanted to share it here. A question came in that asked us to elaborate on Sage's expected role in community engagement. So how would we participate? And what are the expectations in regards to the type or number of community touch point? Community engagement, as I mentioned, is expected to be collaborative between both us here at Sage as well as the selected firm. So this is not a thing where we're just throwing it over the fence and you got to figure it out. It'll definitely be a collaborative process. However, our engagement needs vary by project. So what your firm would recommend may be something that's new, maybe something that would be hyper specific to this type of project that we want to implement. Historically, our engagement has included focus groups, stakeholder meetings, and project-specific activities to include things such as surveys and getting out at local community events as well to do some face-to-face engagement. Regarding submissions, applications must be submitted electronically at the link there that takes you directly to the application, which we'll look at here in a moment. That link is also on our webpage. We ask for all applications to be submitted no later than 3 p.m. Central Time on June 12th. If I'm not mistaken, that's a Friday. And additionally, for any questions, clarifications, again, feedback, please reach out to me. My direct contact information is there at the bottom of the RFQ. I'll also show it to you before we get out of here on the big screen. So you'll have all the ways to get a hold of me here. All right, now let's go ahead and go to our application.
All right. Hopefully you all can see my screen. And just as Shay was mentioning, you can go to the same link and hit apply here. And walking through the application, it mirrors what was in the RFQ. And so we kept it pretty simple that when you hit begin application, it is largely pretty simple and straightforward. All the same detail required. And then to the extent almost every field is mandatory. And that's designed such that we can ensure that we're getting the same information from every firm. And then this is set where it's just auto-populated. And so we, just by way of demonstration, it's relatively pretty straightforward and self-explanatory. To the extent, though, if there are any questions, by any means, you can always email Shalea. But it would be a single submission, a single PDF of 20 pages. And I don't think it was clear in the RFQ. We can talk more about some of the questions, but it would be 8.5 by 11. We understand that regarding font, generally we do not have specifications on that. Obviously, we want it to be legible, but we know that some of these submissions might have maps that are incredibly detailed, so they don't want to be overly prescriptive. Our goal here, though, is we have a selection panel of experts who will obviously be independent, but who will review the application. And part of this is not just looking at your qualifications based on experience, but it's also looking at your qualifications on can you communicate substantively and succinctly? Because whoever our selected firm is will be working with us to engage the community. And the community has a diversity of appetites for how much data they can consume. And so there's quite a bit of information we're asking for, but we also want to know, can you convey as much as possible in order to say, we want to talk to this firm in a future interview?
So thank you again, James, for going over the application. And I had seen right before I dropped that there was a question in the chat regarding sizing of the submission of the SOQ. And so thank you for clarifying that as well for everyone. Appreciate that. Here's our timeline. So today is the first thing. We're having our pre-proposal meeting today. As I mentioned, by next week, the recording of today's meeting, as well as the slides that you're looking at, as well as our grant information will all be uploaded onto our webpage. And I will make sure that we get an email notification sent to you as well once it's there. You are also welcome to check periodically throughout the week next week also, if you haven't heard from me yet, but I will be sending communication to everyone on the call. We do ask that if you have any other questions following today's meeting, please send them to us anytime until the 9th. And the reason why we have that cutoff is so that way, if there are any additional questions that we need to add to the FAQ, we can get those dispersed out to the rest of the group before the deadline of the submission. And so please reach out any point in time. No question is a dumb question. No question is too long. We will make sure that you have the information that you need. As a reminder, submissions are due for those applications by 3 p.m. Central Time, June 12th. So please get those submitted in there. We'd love to get all of you guys to apply. And we're aiming to have a short list of firms selected to get interviews scheduled no later than June 24th. So we want to get those firms notified and start working on scheduling interviews by that time. So that's our high-level timeline from now until interview process in this in our RFQ process. And now the time everyone's been waiting for, Q&A. So at least the computer turned off before we got here, right? Wouldn't want you guys thinking I was avoiding anything. Before we jump to the questions in the chat, we have started a preliminary FAQ list. Some of those questions we've addressed during the first portion of the presentation, but I do want to specifically address a few more of them here. So if you ask these questions, they may look familiar, but for the sake of the group, I wanted to go ahead and address some of them first. After I do that, then I'll jump to the questions that we have here in the chat as well. And then we'll open it up for open floor for anyone who has remaining questions to come off mute, and we will answer those for you. So one really great question that came through, and I wanted to lead our Q&A off with this, is what keeps you up at night, Sage? What concerns do we have about this grant? And I think that's a fair question. And as you can see, we've received reasonable assurance that this grant will not be delayed, it won't be canceled, but that's not a guarantee. Anything could change at any time. And so honestly, that's probably the biggest thing that keeps us up at night is we have everything going, but anything could change. And so we have to strike the right balance as well of maximizing the depths of the community's imagination about the redesign of highway spaces while also being realistic about not only the time it could take to do that, but the cost and the probability of implementation as well. And so as we mentioned earlier, community is important to us. Getting input and listening to the community's needs are essential. We also have to balance that out with what can realistically be done. We also received a question about the federal administration, if they made any changes to our contract as of yet. And the answer is no. The full grant that was awarded to Sage, including the terms of our contract, will be posted to our webpage by next week at the same time as this recording. So you'll have access to all of those documents as well. But no changes have been made to our grant since it was awarded to us in January 2025 and executed beginning February of this year. So I'm choosing to believe that's going to bode well for the rest of the project. But like I said, we'll also have those documents uploaded for you so you and your teams can review. We were asked if we have a standard contract for professional services or if this would be negotiated at the next stage. And the simple answer is there's not a standard for this project per se. We do have some things that are pretty standard for Sage in any contracts, and I'm sure your firms have some standards that you'll ask for. And so terms of a contract for professional services are negotiated with the firm deemed best qualified. And so that would be at the next stage for that firm. And this was already answered, but we received it a couple of times from a few different firms. So I wanted to make sure we hit it here again regarding the 20-page limit for the final statement of qualifications. And specifically it was asked, does that include cover letters, dividers, table of contents, etc.? Yes, 20-page is for everything. Remember as well, you can do resumes or summaries. So if you're kind of bumping up against that page count, maybe changing some of those over to summaries would help as well. But it will include all of your content. And as James mentioned earlier, we're asking for a standard size, a page size of 8.5 to 11 inches should be used. And I believe this is the last question I have here on the screen. So after this one, I'll jump to the chat. And that was, does Sage have any DBE, HUB, or MWBE requirements? Lots of acronyms. We understand that certain government entities will usually require, so it's a great question because it is something that's typically required for contractors. At this time though, no. Sage doesn't have any requirements for disadvantaged business enterprises, historically underutilized businesses, or minority and women-owned business enterprises as well. You are absolutely welcome to utilize those, especially if that's your firm's methodology, but that is not a requirement that we have for this particular project. And I'm going to jump into the chat. Because my computer did freeze, James, I may ask you if there's any questions before these, but I'll read what I see and then I'll bounce it to you if you don't mind, you or Lindsay, to see if there's anything that I missed that hasn't been addressed. So the first question I see is from Beth Hudson of Alamo Architects. And the question asks, for the insurance requirement, do you need a certificate of insurance? Can we upload, or who our carrier is? And at this point, you don't have to provide, James, correct me if I'm wrong, we won't need you to provide a certificate of insurance at this level of the application. Just letting us know yes or no if you have it and who your carrier is will suffice for right now.
So just to add, on the actual application, there's a line for that. I don't know if you want to jump and share your screen real quickly, but you would just simply enter in the insurance information on that one line of the application.
Yes, I'll bounce back over here 1 second. So right here, you just enter it right there, Beth.
So
The next question.
Shalaya, because you did cut off, you lost 5 questions prior to, so we'll just go to those after, but I just wanted to address, we will go to all the questions prior to Beth after we get to the bottom.
Thank you so much. I knew that there were a couple. I wasn't sure how many, so thank you. Josh, I believe that we did address your question. Are there any file size limits on the submission page? Oh, no, that's a little bit of a different question. No, as long as I think the biggest file will likely be just the SOQ. So as long as it's at the 20 page, and that can be either Word doc or PDF, you should be good to go. You should be good to go.
Just to add, Shoya, I suspect though, because there may be lots of images, that some of these, even if it's 20 pages, the file size could be quite large. Using our platform, we should be good, but we'll be able to know if there's an issue with uploads. And so we'll address those once the information is submitted. We'll know if for some reason the submission if it got caught up because it exceeded our service limitations, but we imagine it should be able to handle substantially large ones. So we're not concerned.
I would agree. And Josh and everyone, if you find that you're getting any type of error or anything on your end when you are trying to submit, please shoot me an email so we can do some digging on the back end and get that rectified for you as well. Sarah asked, will you email this deck after this call? We're actually going to post it on our webpage, and then I will email everyone to let you know once it's gone live. So that allows me to, if there's a spelling error or anything like that, we can make those adjustments and then get it updated for you. We'll also be uploading the recording of this call to our webpage as well, and along with our grant information. And so it's going to be here at sage.org. If you were to go to programs, we have the Reconnecting Communities Project right here. I'll also re-put this in the chat for you. But everything will be relinked right here. You'll see the meeting information will disappear, and the links to the recording, the deck, and our FAQs and our grant will all be in this space right up here for you. But I will send you guys an email once that's available, so that way you know that you can go seek it out. And before I jump to the next question that came through after Sarah, I am going to ask Lindsay, just so we don't miss those. Will you please read off the first of those 5 that came in before Beth?
Sure. So the first one is regarding the city's grant that you mentioned. Did you say whether they already have a consultant on board for that initiative?
Yes, I believe so. Give me one moment. Let me jump back to my notes here.
It's okay. That was answered in the article that James shared. Thank you.
Yeah, but to clarify, and I'm going to provide a little bit more context because I want everyone to have access to this information. The grant Sage received, and the one that we talked about, was applied for in 2024. The city of San Antonio as an entity applied for this same grant the year before 2023, which Sage supported with a letter of support. And so for their specific grant process, of which Sage was even part of the RFQ committee, the city has selected the firm AECOM, and I know we've represented AECOM on this call, to be the lead consultant for that. And then I know this is another question that's going to come up. And so to the extent to answer your question, Sarah, yes, they have a consultant and AECOM is already on board working with the city. That process is up and running. And then for the next question, which I think came from, I think it was from Paola, just because it will bring this up. Could we elaborate on the anticipated levels of coordination and alignment? So although these are 2 separate grants, and although there is overlap, I want to kind of explain some of the context of why there's some overlap and then the fullness of the coordination. There was a point in time in 2025 where we weren't sure what the federal government would do, if they would cancel one or both of these grants. And even during the 2025 shutdown talks, the version of the legislation that passed by the House actually stripped the program that funded the city's grant. And so as a precaution, we weren't even sure if the city's grant would move forward. And so we wanted to preserve optionality by having our grant consider that area of I-37 that the city is also studying. Even so, the city manager last October had publicly announced that the land bridge might even be off the table. And so even still, we wanted to have that study maintained. I believe now The city, just like Sage, has received reasonable assurance that they can move forward. They have signed that contract. And so we have a green light on both grants. And then Sage, as a stakeholder, is intimately involved with the city's process. They have a community advisory group, they have a technical advisory group. I had a meeting with the city's transportation and downtown office just Monday. And so we have a very healthy and positive relationship. And so regardless of what happens, we still want every firm bidding on this project to imagine and think independently of what the city is doing, because we won't know for sure what full coordination would look like. And so it could be that because we want to limit confusion, we may have our grant focused on going underground and looking at purely what does the cut and cap look like, and the city only looks at going to land bridge. We don't know that yet, so we want to keep the focus on what's before you. That said, though, I do think I want to be honest that there could be room for flexibility in the effort to limit confusion to the community. We could end up partnering with the city on community engagement efforts related to I-37, but then work independently on our own for the efforts on I-10 and I-35. That was a lot of information, but I wanted to be forthright about those conversations and how much that we want to coordinate with the city. The city's also been fantastic to work with in this effort.
No, thank you, James. And I'll echo what Paula put here in the chat. Very helpful context. Thank you. Before we bounce, Lindsay, to the next one, just because it kind of aligns with what you were talking about, James, Marco did drop in the chat. Is the city's consultant eligible to submit a proposal in response to our RFQ here at Sage, or are they prohibited from doing so? And I believe they'd still be eligible. Is that correct, James?
That's exactly right. This goes in the spirit of preserving optionality. We didn't know what might happen to that contract. And that said, just because AECOM was selected, that does not give them an advantage or a disadvantage. It could be purely based on qualifications that same firm may go ahead and win ours as well, but it could also be that we go in another direction altogether. And so we want to be forthright with the fact that it has no bearing on our proposal.
Beautiful. Thank you. Lindsay, will you read the next one?
Sure, Shalea. Can you please confirm whether 11 by 17 fold-out pages are allowed in the submission, particularly for schedule or other graphic-heavy content?
Great question. And I think that James answered that when I was offline. So if anyone was disappointed, he can take all of the heat. But just to reiterate, in case anyone missed it, we are requesting that it's in standard paper size of your 8.5 by 11 inches as well for us. Thank
And
you.
then I failed to see there's a part B. Will the contract type for this project be time and materials or cost plus fixed fee, excuse me?
Oh, good question. James, can you clarify that for me, for us, please?
Because we are assessing the merits of qualifications, the truth of the matter is that it doesn't matter. What we want to be clear about, though, is whatever it is, it can exceed 2.3 million. So which goes to the execution component. We can work with either one. It could be a fixed fee that goes up to exactly 2.3 million. Or it could be based on the qualifications of the team and the materials involved. But whatever that is, our contract that we'll eventually sign will stipulate that it can't exceed that number. That said, though, we want to be flexible. There are options that allow for blended options. And then to the extent there is no prohibition on finding additional funds, but we have not done that yet. And so to the extent that if the winning firm goes time material and find new funding, it could even exceed that 2.3 million limit, but we can't promise that at this time. So we want to be forthright about that as well.
Beautiful. Thank you. Were there any others, Lindsay, before I open it up to the floor?
Lindsay, I think you might be muted.
So sorry. Will there be a short list from the proposers and an interview?
Yes, there will be an interview. Oh, go ahead, James. Sorry. While you're doing that, I'll slide back to that slide.
Getting at is, of all the firms that submit an application, Staff will certainly review to make sure, hey, were applications complete and did they meet the qualifications and the minimum requirements we had? And then, yes, a subset of firms that have submitted materials will be invited to an interview. And then just to go to Laura's question that Katie shared, who will serve on the selection committee, what we can share is that selection committee will be comprised of a combination of SAGE staff, SAGE board members, and then experts from the field. So both transportation and civil engineers, as architects, who will not be bidding on this grant. It will only be disinterested folks.
Great question. And Mukul, am I pronouncing that correctly? Okay, perfect. Mukul asked in the chat here, can we confirm, since we're talking about some dates there, the submittal deadline is June 12th and not June 6th, and that is correct. So to go with the question about interviews, our goal is to have our short list of firms selected and notified by June 24th so we can start scheduling those interviews. Your submittal for your application is due by June 12th by 3 p.m. Questions, we're asking any additional questions that you may have between now and then. We request that you submit them to us no later than June 9th. And that's so that way we can share them with the rest of the group, the rest of the firms that have submitted, if there's anything that requires us to make changes to that FAQ. Excellent question. Lindsay, did you have any others that I missed?
No, ma'am, it's we caught up on all the early questions.
I I have
I'm
one
gonna go ahead.
I have one
No, go ahead.
additional question. If the June 9th is the deadline for asking questions, do you have a deadline by which Sage would respond to the questions?
Yes. So in general, and this is bigger than the project, just general outreach to Sage. Internally, we strive to respond to any email or phone call within 24 hours. And so it comes to me, so I can tell you, yes, especially around June 9th, those questions that come in on that date, my goal would be to respond no later than the very next day. So that way, if there were any updates needed to our FAQs, we could get those out before that submission due deadline by the 12th.
And then just actually, for full transparency, anytime any firm asks us a question, we log it and we post it on our site. And so to the extent that we want everyone to have as much notice and as much access to the same information. And so to the extent, just like we're going to post this deck, we will also be posting every question from every firm who answered on this so that everyone has a fair shot at the application.
Thank you. And then, yes, the 24th is not the actual interview date. Now, we could likely have some interviews scheduled for that date, but we want to make sure that we've at least notified our firms that we'd like to invite to an interview because we know that there'll be some coordination that needs to take place with regards to scheduling of the individuals that will be involved in that interview process, as well as the firm directly. That's a great question. Excellent. Paula has here in the chat as well. Could you elaborate on the contract duration is throughout the project completion estimated April 2027? Let me make sure I'm reading the question correctly. Paula, so please feel free to unmute if I'm misunderstanding this.
No,
You're wanting to.
It's
Go
from
ahead.
it's the language directly from, oh, hello, first of all. It's the language directly from the RFQ document, thinking about time frame, right? So I want to understand, the thinking about the project and budget and timeline. So the contract duration is estimated. So does that mean any time frame thinking in this proposal needs to consider that, anticipate that as a hard date? Is there flexibility? Is there an expectation that we think through that? Can you elaborate?
Oh, that's a great question. And so for us, we're hoping that the project is completed, meaning we have the deliverables, we have the report by April 2027. However, it is estimated. So if it looks like it's going to be May, right? We have some wiggle room there. If your timeline you think you and your firm are like, probably actually March when we look at those things. There is some wiggle room and some flexibility with that, but we are targeting April 2027 as an estimated end time for this.
Thank
So
you,
if I may
super
add,
helpful.
Go ahead,
you'll
James. You wanted to
see,
add something?
yeah, you'll see we're going to post the actual contact we have with the Department of Transportation and Federal Highway Authority, and you will see that the contract has a grant deadline of June 27th. So I just want to go ahead and put that out there. The reason why we estimate, we always want to be both assertive and aggressive. There's been too many experiences with other public projects where the work starts slowly. And as Shalea mentioned, we are ambitious and we are assertive, maybe even to a fault. That said, because anytime you are working with a project like this, there's bound to be delays or things don't work as expected. But also, more importantly, I will always welcome allowing more time for community engagement to the extent that I would rather defer to be on the earlier side. But if we're delayed, it's delayed because we want to hear more voices. That said, we can probably see if the Department of Transportation is open to a contract extension. We just can't guarantee it, which is why we state April 27th as the estimate, but then the federal government will have a June deadline, and we don't know if that can be extended or not.
Thank you for that added context. Did that clarify, Paula, or did it add any additional questions that come to mind for you?
No, that's very helpful and that makes sense. Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. We are still an open floor and we are quite a bit ahead of time. So I do want to open it back up. If there's anyone that has any additional questions, you're welcome to keep typing in the chat. However, I think we've gone through all the questions in the chat. So if you'd like to unmute, please feel free and jump in with any additional questions that are lingering in the back of your mind.
I don't want to sound rude or anything, but I guess a question for you all to consider is if you can think of actually moving the deadline by which you want the questions to be asked. This just gives the consultant team a little more time to refine the proposal that you all are expecting based on the answers that you will give to the questions, as opposed to just 2 days. So it's just a request if you all would like to take that into account. I think it will help all the consultant teams a little bit to be able to, customize their proposal to the answers to the questions that you'll have.
Well, thank you for that suggestion, McCool. Can I ask you a question? And it's really just because you asked the question. Based on your experience or your preference, I know we have June 9th as the date right now. What would you recommend or what would be your recommendation?
I can only speak about my experience, and I would say usually most jurisdictions give about a week's time between the submittal and by the time they post the answers to the question. We also have marketing departments that work overnight, but we like everyone to have a nice work-life balance and not be stressed out. Sometimes the clients have then changed the deadlines, but I know you all have already moved it from the 6th to the 12th. So it's just food for thought for you all to consider.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it. It was not rude at all, just so you know. So thank you. Anyone else with, go ahead. I spoke over someone.
That's okay. This is Beth with Alamo. You're stating that as soon as you get a question, you're going to post it to the website and we all see the answers. So I think since we're not going to be waiting for an addendum with all the questions answered, I think keeping up to date with your website and seeing the answers as they come in will be helpful. For sure.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I see you had a second and a third, I guess, at this point, cool, in the comment section with Sarah as well. While you all are noodling on any final questions, thoughts, feedback, or suggestions, I will just do one more quick reminder in case anybody didn't get a chance to do so at the top of the call. Please, if you haven't already done so, drop your email in the chat. That just confirms, ensures that I have it. So that way next week when our current list of FAQs, the recording, and the slide deck are updated to our webpage, I can send you email to let you know that that has been updated. I did also drop the link to our webpage in the chat for anyone who hasn't had a chance to look at it yet. So you have that there, but I will send an email to you guys directly once we have everything uploaded for you. Wanted to come back in and open the floor up one last time. If there were any questions that anyone thought of in our short break that you would like to ask, again, while you can either type it in the chat or unmute. This does not end question time. So as you start pulling things together, you and your team, please do not hesitate to reach out, send those questions over to us. And as James mentioned, any new question that comes through, we will be updating our FAQ list to make sure that we're keeping that as current as possible for you all so everyone can benefit from the information that is shared with the various firms.
Mm-hmm. I have two questions.
Go ahead, Marco.
I live in Denver Heights, and my little community group has been invited to a series of, I guess, public meetings and walk audits to talk about the Reconnecting Communities Grant. Is that being done by Velocity by itself and partners, or is that part of the city's effort?
That is a good. Go ahead, James. Yeah, that's a good question because I know there's a lot going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there is. And so to be clear, SAGE is intimately involved with all of these efforts, but at various degrees. And so the walking audit you referred to is actually in coordination with Velocity, SAGE, and another nonprofit called LIST. If you go to, I think it's built from eastside.org, I'll go ahead and drop it in the chat. That's separate and apart from this effort, but it's connected. That walking audit, the meeting on Saturday, actually going to start here at the SAGE office. We're going to walk along Commerce Street, down the route of the Silver Line, and then circle back down Cherry towards Velocity. In a way, it is tangentially related because it deals with transportation infrastructure. However, that effort is different than our RFQ. The city has been invited to participate. I believe Kat Hernandez, who's the director of transportation, and maybe Shannon with downtown office will either attend or have representatives. But I also don't want to confuse because you're probably, especially if you live in Dignoway or Denver Heights, you're getting lots of events.
Yeah.
And that is our effort to be inclusive, but we understand it sometimes feel confusing.
Okay, yeah, that helps. And yeah, they're good events, obviously. And I do understand from my neighbors, it could be very confusing. And then my second question kind of goes with that point. Obviously there's going to be strong coordination with the city's effort and, all the good stuff that's happening in our community. In order to not create more confusion and not to duplicate efforts of y'all's project, is it possible to receive the scope and schedule from the city's consultant work to make sure that our proposals are not proposing anything that's already going to be done? And to, of course, have some coordination between tasks as well.
It's my understanding that that should be an easy yes. It's public dollars. It is a public document. What I don't know is how quickly that can be made available. And so to the extent what I would share is at the very minimum, please proceed as if you didn't have information. If we're able to get it, that's great. But and there's nothing stopping you as a private citizen from requesting the same thing. But certainly, once we have a firm selected for our contract, we will definitely want to coordinate with the city's consultant to make sure we're aligned and not stepping over our toes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, James, for your responses. And thank you, Marco, for your question. Regarding your first question, I did drop the link in the chat for anyone else who would be interested and the built for the eastside.org webpage. So I did drop that in there. So thank you for the question because we had not mentioned that at all. Any other questions at this time? And feel free to just take yourself off mute. I will stop talking so you can have the floor. All right, going once, going twice. Well, on that note, thank you, Rebecca, and thank you, everyone else, for your time, for your suggestions and feedback, for your questions as well. I know I've said it several times, but I'll repeat it one last time. We will be having the recording of today's session, the slide deck, the FAQs that we currently have developed, as well as the information related to our grant. You'll have all of that uploaded to our webpage by next week. We've already started that process. So once everything is up and ready for you, I will shoot you all an email. So thank you for dropping your emails in the chat to let you know that that is live. And please reach out if you have any questions, any additional feedback or concerns, and we look forward to receiving your applications. Thank you so much.
Thank you.